Another blockbuster movie, another video game tie-in. That's what they used to say, until the first movie-based Spider-Man game was released.
No autographs, please.
It was really the first video game to deliver a web-slinging experience that actually made you feel like you were the web-slinger. With the third movie making its debut, it's time once again to snap on the web shooter and take a swinging tour of New York City. Is it top shelf or tourist trap? The flick is receiving a lukewarm reception, and the prose in the game manages to eclipse its typicality.
Parker, that's the third call I got about giant lizards running amok in Gramercy Park. Giant lizards!
Jumping around like a mouse on a hot griddle. It's practically impossible to link all of the various sequences together into one cohesive narrative. What good is a branching storyline if it's told in 4 or 5 brief cinemas and none of them tie into the rest?
Light it up.
It's a case of trying to do too much in too short a period of time, and it makes it really difficult to care much about the story in Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is an open-ended game in the most rudimentary sense of the phrase. There's a map of New York City that you can access to check out available mission objectives, and when you select one, a waypoint will guide Spidey to his trigger point. Expect to have half a dozen available missions at any time, and that's in addition to a battery of secondary crime-fighting objectives. At the same time, they lack any sense of variety. Most revolve around getting from one point to another and saving someone's tail, beating someone up, or defusing a bomb. There's no rhyme or reason to them either, and good luck figuring out which ones move the main plot forward. You'll eventually gain the black suit, but it takes far too long. At the same time, it's almost worth the wait, as Parker's dark doppelganger provides the game's strongest thrills. While you could technically play Spider-Man 3 for what seems like eternity, you'll be repeating the same 2 hours of gameplay ad nauseum. Even the dozen or so hours it takes to get you through the main story arc eventually becomes a grind. With all of the power seething from the seams of this current generation of hardware, one would assume that big-budget games like Spider-Man 3 would be manipulating the preconceptions of gameplay. What we have here is the same game we've been playing for 5 years. Sure, the feeling of swinging through Manhattan is just as exhilarating and fun as it's always been, but this is essentially the third game to use this as its crutch. The combat doesn't exactly push the envelope either, yet there are more moves in this game than you'll ever want or need to use. You can get by with just a couple effective combos, and generally, mashing buttons like a maniac is just as sound a strategy as any. There is a new countering system, and it works fine when it's one-on-one, but showdowns like this are rare. When 4 or 5 thugs are all swinging at different times, countering goes out the window in favor of clobbering the buttons. Trying to get a good view in Spider-Man 3 is a game unto itself. It's obvious the camera's been programmed for following the web slinging, and that's about the only place it works well. When indoors or in major brawls, you'll fight with it more than you will the bad guys. Remember the QuickTime events made popular by Resident Evil 4 and God of War? Well, they've managed to crawl their way into Spider-Man 3. There's no warning when they're about to happen, which can be annoying, but they're some of the few times in the game where you really get to see Spidey's agility on display. Playing Spider-Man 3 is a love-hate relationship. The web-slinging is handled well, just like it always is, and the Me Too QuickTime events provide some variety. But the monotonous missions and combat, in conjunction with the finicky camera, manage to keep the enjoyment levels modest. At $60, it's hard to recommend Spider-Man 3 for a purchase. You can get through the main story in a casual weekend of playing, and the extra mission objectives aren't exactly compelling. Tack on some seriously underwhelming visuals and a problematic camera, and you're left with a game that has its moments, but is ultimately disappointing, even for true believers.
Nothing's worrying.